Please welcome back Tonatiuh and Bill Condon to the stage of the Sequoia. Congratulations. This is such an incredible film, and even though it's been made into movies and a play, and this novel has just inspired so much great work, and I can't think of anything that's even more contemporary right now than this film. Before I get into that, the more serious elements of it, I heard a story at dinner about a table reading that was quite, I guess, the talk of, if not the town, the dinner. How about giving us a little insight into that in terms of your relationship with some of the cast? And
I think it was in reference to The Visit.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the question that I usually get asked is, what was it like when you first met Jennifer Lopez? Yes, I know you're laughing because it's true. You're wondering this. Well, there was a table read where it was like we're going to do the number of Visit where Aurora meets, where Valentina, oh my goodness, where's my brain? Where Molina meets the Spiderwoman. They have the little crossover moment. And in my mind, I thought a table read meant you were going to sit at the table and you were going to read it and talk. Cut to, Jennifer Lopez starts singing out the song, full belt, and I throw my glasses to the side and we crawl across this fold-up table, inches from kissing each other, and Bill's right in the middle, just like, yeah, there it is. And lo and behold, it became our poster.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
yeah, and that's a great story, and we'll come back to that as well. But so, Bill, in terms of the film itself, what was their impetus for you really to make this? It's obvious once you see the film, but you had to probably give it some tremendous thought. Was this a novel that resonated with you for a long time?
A novel I read right after college. I loved it. It's a very strange novel. It's all told in dialogue, and then footnotes that are sort of footnotes that Valentine might have written about things like theories about homosexuality. Is that my hum?
I don't know. Is it my heart?
Too close, maybe?
Oh, it's the movie next door.
Oh, action movie.
The power of cinema.
Good. Got
Maybe
it.
this is the time to talk about the fundraising for the renovation. I'm willing to speak to every one of you individually on the way out.
Absolutely. I love the novel, but I revisited it, and it's so far. It feels like we've taken 50 years to catch up to it, you know? And each iteration of this before has been groundbreaking for its time, but there was an awful lot that was in the novel that hadn't been expressed before. So that was part of it. And part of it, too, it started when I worked on the adaptation of Chicago, and I do love this form, and I do think there are actually very few Broadway musicals that should be movies, because it's an entirely different medium, but this one screamed out to be. It felt to me that there are three Cantor musicals. There's Cabaret Chicago and this, that share a kind of leading character. Sally Bowles, Roxy Hart, Molina, they're all people who have very, very difficult, if not desperate circumstances, desperate lives, who find solace and hope in show business. It's a reflection of the great lyricist Fred Ebb. That's who he was. And I just thought this trilogy has to be completed. That was a lot of it.
Well, you've made so many, contributed to so many beautiful musicals that became films, and this one in particular seems to resonate, from a very deep personal part to really some very strong themes that were relevant then. In fact, this is the first version that has actually had a Latino cast, and when you were approached with this, I might as well ask you now, Tonatiuh, was this something you had realized in the past and made it even more compelling to do?
That's a wonderful question that, like I said earlier in my speech beforehand, I'm a working class actor, so when a job approaches you, you don't even think about that. You said, yes, I will do the job. No, but it is powerful. I mean, I think there's a certain level of authenticity that comes with it, but it added subtextual layers. I don't know, the source material was wonderful in and of itself, and so just to get the opportunity to play in that world and to tell a three-dimensional character's story was the gift.
And Bill, in terms of this, why this film is so current now, how much of that was initially part of your vision, or did it just coincide with what was going on here?
Well, sadly, it never stops being relevant, frankly. The playbook, in this case, the
Autocratic.
yes, the demonization of trans people is something, and in Puig's case, he was talking about a military junta in Argentina who was demonizing queer people, right? And there are a lot of reasons why the political, left was imprisoned in that regime, but queer people were imprisoned just for being who they were, So I wrote this before the beginning of the election season, and we shot it during the election season, and it was hard not to be aware of the fact that obviously the playbook was being, kind of enacted again, and trans people were being demonized. I think we never had any idea that the idea of trans terrorists, would ever, come to enter the vocabulary. I think none of us saw what was going to happen. So the fact that it is more relevant, that there are tanks on the street, is not something to celebrate.
No, but thank you for making this for all those reasons and more. In terms of, I want to go a little bit back to the artistic aspect, and Tonatiuh, I know you're as young as you are, an experienced actor in many areas, theater and film and TV. But was it at any time like you waking up for a dream in the sense of working with these incredible Diego and
Jennifer? Yeah, no, I always joke around that it felt like I was getting an invitation to the Olympics. Truly, it was working with three artists whose work I admire. And it was one of those, pinch me moments where I get to sing and dance with Jennifer Lopez. I get to act across Diego Luna, whose work I grew up watching, and to live inside of not just a musical, but a musical told through the incredible artist that is Bill Condon. And so that it was one of those moments. But then there comes this idea where it's just like, oh my gosh, well, I have to step it up if I'm going to go to the Olympics, right? Like I really have to make sure that that I'm at the very least on par with everyone else. And that was part of the excitement. And then the beautiful part of it all was is the ability to, I think I kept repeating to myself, if I only get one chance to say it, how do I want to do it, right? And meticulously thinking about and crafting what Molina's look would be, but also contextualizing it under, well, if a genderqueer person is a lead, how do I want them to be the lead? And what does genderqueerness mean for this person in particular, given those circumstances? And so I ended up losing 45 pounds in about 50 days for it, and went through a Broadway boot camp to make sure to tell the story as best as possible. But that's a part of that's what makes art fun. That's what makes being an actor fun.
And for your side of it too, did you ever feel like, well, I was taking a chance on a new person? I know Bernie Telsey, who famous, obviously, casting director, had said we weren't just casting a role where we're introducing an artist. We were casting, excuse me, I said it wrong. We weren't just casting a role. We were introducing an artist. And casting moments like this are always very exciting, but they're also risky.
Sure. And I've been through this once before with Dreamgirls because we have this amazing cast there, but it really, none of it would have mattered if we didn't have the right actress playing Effie. And Jennifer Hudson hadn't made movies before, and we were sort of placing our bets on her. Here, you'd made a number of things, but we were placing all of our bets on Tonatiuh. But I have to say, it was not. I completely believed in it, you know, because we had a rigorous process of exploration before we started. You know, we met 4 times. We worked. You worked with Diego, with Jennifer, with the choreographers, with the music team, and it was just every time it just got better and better, and it was obvious that it was going to work, I thought.
I think we can all agree on that. From this is a complicated version of it, and with literally 2 worlds.
Yeah.
And I felt at the beginning, when it opens in an austere environment, and then it goes to Technicolor, it kind of took me to a flashback of Mad Max, when they go from a classic aperture to CinemaScope. That kind of feeling of, wow, you know, what are we in for here? There are so many touches of that are theatrical, which makes sense in this film. Tell me about that kind of decision making and what went into that.
Well, that was the big scary challenge of the movie, that in the writing and the execution of the movie, that we were making these 2 separate movies, and how would you make sure that they would come to be the same film, you know, that they wouldn't feel like interruptions. So, you know, one of the things that's new in this movie is the single musical that he's narrating, and I did want it to reflect what was happening between these 2 characters in the prison, so that you felt as you went back into that movie, it takes a while for this penny to drop, but I think finally you start to feel, you know, because Molina is narrating this, and he's probably a very unreliable narrator, he's probably making some of it up, that it does express what he's going through emotionally, and then Valentine starts to connect to it too that way. I think one of the things, you know, it's easy to look at it and think Hollywood and reality, but I think reality is as much a genre as any other. You know, in the movie, you know, at the end, when he's on that sidewalk in the script, I think I described it as dying in a Sidney Lumet movie is not what he had in mind. You know, so that movie has its own rules, but we start to slowly, as these 2 characters come together, incredibly different. These 2 incredibly different movies start to come together, so that if you look at the lighting in the cell as these characters get closer and fall in love, it does become more romantic. You know, it does take on a different feel, and as we progress, you know, the Spiderwoman steps off of that, you know, Technicolor melodramatic screen and actually is in the prison. So that for me was the challenge. The scary fun of it was, will they not interrupt each other but inform each other and become a complete experience?
Yeah, and it was to your credit that it did. But what was so powerful was the love story between these 2 men, the polar opposites who were thrown together. And it was incredibly moving, and I wonder for you what that, working together with Diego, what was the process of that, and to get this kind of emotional heights that were so real, and you could see how the relationship developed, of course, but we don't know
The inner workings.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll let you know how the sausage gets made. No, well, we made two different films, right? So I think the construction of the initial film, the musical, my interaction with Diego was we were in a lover's triangle, essentially, like fighting for Aurora's love. And so we didn't, but that really is like the Diego and Jennifer arc and love story there. But it wasn't, we then took a 2-week break to travel down to South America to shoot the prison sequence, and Bill gifted us as actors something that's kind of unusual in cinema, which is we shot the entire movie in sequence. And so the first time that Molina meets Valentine was the first time that Diego and Tonatiuh saw each other in full character. And on the surface layer, right, the characters are going through horrors and experiencing prison and learning to depend on one another and see their vulnerabilities. But on a meta layer, we as actors were doing the same, and we're dependent on one another in order to get through it. And so I don't know, there was this beautiful dependency both on the imagined reality and the lived reality. I'm constantly joking that it felt like it was a Stanford prison experiment, because we would go in, before the sun would come up and leave after the sun had gone down. But it was one of those things where the two of us felt this need and dependency on one another, to the point where I said, I don't want this movie to end, and felt it.
And you could feel that in it, and literally through not just the dialogue of the separation there when you left, and and you left Diego there. That was powerful, very powerful. I wanted to get into a little lighter moment regarding that also. That was a beautiful moment. And I do hear something.
It's the lighter moment arriving.
Yeah, that means that we changed to a lighter moment. You had to do a lot of things on one of the worlds, like that maybe you didn't necessarily had as much experience in, dancing with Jennifer Lopez, singing.
Yeah.
And you're surrounded by dozens of professional dancers. Mm-hmm. So was that another 6 months of training? Because it looked like it. It looked like you really did a
That's very sweet.
job.
We are still independently financed. So it was probably about a month, maybe like 3 weeks of rehearsal that we did. I'm not quite sure on the exact number, but what was most striking was I was born and raised in Los Angeles and spent my entire adult life there working. But it was my first time really working with the Broadway community. And man, it felt like I found kindred spirits, the siblings that I didn't know I had on a different coast. People who have committed their entire lives to the art form with the same crazy delusion that we all have as artists, that this is what we decided to dedicate our lives to. And so it was like going to school every day. It was fun. It was like you're going to your favorite class every single day. And it didn't matter what age anybody was. It was like joyous. And even the parts where we were like frustrated over this step or whatever, like we were talking about the art that we love to make, and it was a story that everybody was so passionate to tell. And so it was just wonderful. And then like even down to Jennifer Lopez, who like arguably has one of the best careers of a lifetime, of anyone's lifetime. She got to play multiple people and live a fantasy in a musical that, she adored and loved in the same way that I did. And so it's just fun to see that no matter where you are in your career, this story can still bring so much joy for like each of the creatives in it.
And Bill, you managed to make a very powerful, serious movie and a musical at the same time. Is that something you would attempt to do again?
Yeah, I love the form, and I do think it's capable of saying a lot. That was part of what appealed to me here, is that Aurora is actually a reflection of Molina. Neither of them have found love in life, you know? But the story she's in is a stylized 50s Hollywood musical, and I tried to find my inner Vincent Minnelli, Douglas Sirk, George Cukor, and within that style of acting, express deeper, serious stuff through movement and color and design. And so I do think musicals actually have a lot more going on than they're given credit for. Even, you know, especially musicals of that period, it just takes a little extra work to see what they were. People connected them for a reason, you know, and some of them actually go into a pretty dark place.
Well, maybe we have something to look forward to.
Oh, it'd be fun. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Why don't we open it up for some questions from the audience? I'm not quite sure if we have a mic runner here.
We could probably hear it. Yeah.
Volunteers?
We could probably hear it, too.
All right. Well, let's start with some questions, and we'll see if people could speak very loudly. Any questions out there in the audience? It's very hard for me to see people if they're raising their hands. Yes, right over here.
Hi, nice to meet you. It's a big pleasure to be here and stay with us. I'm Brazilian, so my English is not perfect, sorry. But I'm curious about what were your references to direct this film, as the other Kiss of the Spiderwoman by Hector Babenco. I don't know what were, I'm just curious. Thank you.
What were the references in directing this film? And what was this, the Babenco part of that?
There is this other film.
Yeah.
So if you were inspired by them by it or not? Or,
I love that movie. As a young gay man, to see that film and to see a huge movie star at the height of his career at that point choose to play that gay window dresser meant everything. You know, it really was a groundbreaking movie. But it was Babenco's movie. It was Babenco's take on this novel, and it really wasn't a reference point for me. I was going back to the novel and then picking pieces from the musical adaptation too. So again, everything was about being true to what Puig had created, and that was a love story. You know, each of the various iterations has been groundbreaking, but for example, there was always this alteration where the final kiss, the lovemaking, had an element of transaction to it. You know, it was going to be in the show. You know, if I go to him right now, you know, he'll share my information. You know, so it was there was a sense that if it made you uncomfortable to imagine that a character like Valentine would actually make love to Molina out of desire and love, you were kind of let off the hook a little bit, you know? And I thought that was important. That's not true in the novel. The novel is about the fact that if you put people in this circumstance and strip everything away, with the threat of death, you know, there on a daily basis, that they would start to see each other beyond, as individuals, you know, and in this case, connect. And I thought that's the revolutionary idea, I think, here. I brought this movie about Kinsey here years ago, you know. No, it's true. And his thing was, you know, the Kinsey scale is famous, but one of his, I think, more important ideas is that there are 8 billion human sexualities, that it's as individual as a fingerprint, you know? And so, and he actually understood the political value of identification, gay movement or feminist movement, things like that. But he actually thought the only real liberation was acknowledging that everybody is different and embracing that fact. And I think Puig was kind of onto the same idea.
Okay, additional questions from the audience? If shout one out, yeah, if I can't see you. Right over there, I think there's a woman.
About queer characters always die.
Yeah.
Oh, hilarious.
Talk to me about the ending and any conflicted feelings. Either you had acting it or you had directing it. Were there alternatives that you thought about, or how did you reconcile with it?
Did everyone hear that question? No. The question was about a queer character dying at the end. Did you spend much time discussing that element and what that would mean in terms of the film?
Sure. Well, I think it's a part of the construction that Molina does die, but so that isn't a part of it. And I think it's actually kind of tongue-in-cheek that we gave away the ending. Like when he literally says that this what always happens in Hollywood films. However, I do think that there's something really beautiful. I don't know. Like the Spiderwoman to me is the shadow side of Molina that haunts them, and probably even the internalized like struggle, hate, self-talk, whatever you want, inner saboteur, whatever language you want to put around that. And so there's like a fear and a resentment and like just a negative association. And I think that as Molina transitioned from being a loser in their own story to being the hero in their own story as a means of falling in love, that final moment, the true death, was the embrace of all sides of who they are, and the walk up the steps and embracing that final kiss was almost a completion of their karmic cycle of saying like, no, I am the totality of all of who I am. I am the things that I was most ashamed about. And so I think that they're, in short, like they died for love. But not just of someone else, but like they learned to love all of who they are.
Yeah, the line, homosexuals always die, often die in Hollywood movies, usually they kill themselves. That is a reference to an incredibly influential book that was published around the same time as the novel by Vida called The Celluloid Closet. It was the first book that really looked at gay characters in the movies, and that was a major perception of his. For me, what's interesting, as you say, Valentine and Molina have a different interpretation of what happens. For Valentine, it's a political act of sacrifice that his doing. In other words, he identifies with that. He, after all of this, hating Hollywood musicals, identifies with the sacrifice of this character, and Molina also identifies with this selfless act of love. And to me, that's the power of movies. That's what it's about, that they can speak intimately to someone in entirely different ways.
Well, I think that's a beautiful moment to probably wind down this conversation, but I want to thank you both for this incredible film. A performance that's going to be talked about for months and months to come. And I know the film opens on Friday, so please tell your friends.
Yeah.
And I'll be waiting for the musical adaptation of Gods and Monsters and Kinsey.
Yeah.
And we'll show them at the Mill Valley Film Festival.
Thank you. And just a friendly reminder.
For this incredible festival.
Yes, and just a friendly reminder, we are an independently financed film, and creating art in this time is incredibly difficult. And so coming to the movies really does make a communal experience. So please come and join us this weekend.
Thank you.
Absolutely.